In tonight's Government Insider, we continue our weekly series focused on the stars of the federal workplace. The Service to America medals, or SAMMys, honor federal workers who show a commitment to government and make the agencies they work for stronger. The awards are put on by our friends at the Partnership for Public Service. You'll meet a new finalist here on Capitol Insider every Thursday night. Lucille Jones, science advisor for risk reduction at the U.S. Geological Survey, has informed countless communities about how to prepare for earthquakes, protecting lives and critical infrastructure. She joins us via Skype from Pasadena, California. First of all, Lucy, congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you.
Well, the U.S. Geological Survey estimates that more than 1 million lower magnitude earthquakes happen every year. You work with the public and policymakers to educate communities about how to prevent death and destruction during these events. Tell us more.
Okay, well, it's actually a challenge to take the type of information that we as scientists collect about earthquakes and turn them into forms that can be understood and used as the basis for decisions by policymakers. But if we don't do that, we end up in a situation where the disaster becomes inevitable. And we like to say, you know, the earthquake's inevitable, but the disaster is not. And it's when they use our information that we can change those outcomes. But it's a very different process to get that information to people than it is to create it as a research scientist.
Now, not only do you educate the public, but you've led groundbreaking research on estimating foreshock and aftershock sequences. How were you able to find patterns in the data to predict these events?
Well, that's actually what we've been able to show, is that there's not as much pattern as we wish there was, that a foreshock is just a main shock that happens to have a really big aftershock. In other words, foreshocks aren't different from any other earthquakes. Rather, we need to use the statistics of how earthquakes happen. And we can describe the time, we can describe the magnitude distribution. And actually, very early in my career, I worked in China, and this was actually in the late 70s, where it looked like they'd been predicting earthquakes. And what we found was that they were using the same information that we have. An earthquake might be a foreshock, so your chances are up, but they're still pretty low. In China, they could use that information to evacuate because the consequences of not evacuating were so large, so many people would die. Here in California, we'd never do the same thing because the consequences of predicting can be devastating. We could kill people on the freeway, we lose a lot of money, and not many people die in earthquakes anymore. So the same information scientifically is used very differently in the two societies. So what I've tried to do is to say, take the science information and turn it into a form where a policymaker who understands what's the benefit of evacuating or not has the information, rather than leaving it to a seismologist to make that decision.
Now, Lucy, all of this information helped create disaster simulations like the shakeout, arc storm, and event tsunami scenarios. How have these programs helped engineers and public officials prepare for disasters?
This is our chance of creating scientifically defensible stories, if you will. Put all the science together, but put it in a framework that the policymaker can use and understand the consequences of their decisions. So they've been used widely for emergency management, training exercises, and last year, even more significantly, we used it in the city of Los Angeles to try and decide what things would give us our best chance of not having a disaster. So looking at where the problems would be in the scenario, the city came to the decision, for instance, that it was worthwhile investing really quite a lot of money, billions of dollars, in upgrading their water system so it won't fail after the earthquake.
Good point. Before we go, I'd like to find out more about why you chose public service, especially when there are so many options in the private sector. You joined the USGS in 1983. What drew you to the agency, Lucy?
I wanted to have the science used. I mean, my main alternative would have been an academic position. I'm actually here on campus at Caltech. But the purpose, you know, a professor trains students and does his own research. To make the society safer, that's only going to happen through public service. And we need to have an independent entity not driven by profit to tell us what the hazard is, so that we know that it's something that's not it's not susceptible to human decisions. It really is what the hazard is if we want to make the right decisions.
Good point. Lucy Jones, Science Advisor for Risk Reduction with the U.S. Geological Survey. Thanks and good luck to you.
Thank you.
And for the first time, the Partnership for Public Service wants your vote. Log on to the Service to America Medals website to view all of the finalists, including those who have been featured here on Capital Insider, and vote for your favorite. The winner will receive the People's Choice Award. Hurry, voting ends September 30th.